happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into episode number 29 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name is Kyle Sutherland, alongside Kevin Bohannon, as we look forward to week 2. For the most part, it's the last week of non-conference, Kevin. I know down the line with how conferences have been the last couple of years that you're going to have some of those towards the end of the season and when teams try to make up weeks and whatnot. But for the most part, teams will get back or get into conference play fully next week. So we're going to preview a little bit. Of course, most of our stuff is recaps, but we'll recap a lot of week 1. Had another great week of football. I got to call a game both Friday and Saturday, so that was a lot of fun. And, of course, you and Randy were in Carlisle with RJ and I. We just had a big old buzz party there in Carlisle in Lonoke County, so it was a whole lot of fun there, and really appreciate the hospitality from the Bison faithful.
Yeah, they did a really good job. Met some board members, came by and wanted to express their, gratefulness that we were out there, and we got to have a little Craig's versus Nick's barbecue challenge. Craig's came out on top, and it was a great atmosphere. Small town football. Well, I've been there for Carlisle Hazen, and the atmosphere was just as electric with Junction City coming to town. Top 2 teams in Class 2A. And Kyle, you called the game. I have never seen so many penalties in one game. Now, Not to say that they shouldn't have been called, but there were some instances in the first half. I remember Devin Ball, they called false start, then declined a penalty. It was a dead ball and just ran the next play like it was just nothing. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So, Carlisle turned it on second half. Ty Tanksley got some juice. They got some athletes at Carlisle, but I think Junction City will be all right.
Oh, yeah. We'll get into more of that, kind of where you and I think Junction City goes from here. I'm with you. I think when you're that loaded as they are, that there are some fixable issues that they have. Now, they are some issues. There's no question, but I think that they are fixable. So before we get into it, I want to remind everybody, if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell as well. No rhyme intended, and it will notify you every time we release an episode, which during football season, unless otherwise mentioned, is Tuesday morning first thing. So subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on the audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen, we are there. So now we will get into the reason why you're all here, and that is starting in Class 7A at the top, as we always do. The Bryant Hornets, what a day they had, Kevin. Go on the road to St. Louis after a very long day. Now, I had heard that their first bus broke down. I can't remember. I don't remember if RJ told me that or while we were going on or before we went on air, but either way, if that happened or not, it's a long trip. It's at least a 6-hour trip. They took that on Friday. Then they came back after the game, from what I understood, but they took care of Christian Brothers Missouri, the Class 6 runner-up from last year in the state final with authority, 42-21. Pulaski Academy, they take down Madison Ridgeland, Mississippi Academy for the 4th consecutive season, 60-36. Another high-scoring game that a 7A team won. Harbor out of Springdale, 65-50 over Farmington. How about this? The Cabot Panthers, they come back from a 10-point deficit to win 44-38 over Bentonville West. And overtime, Keegan Vest with the 2-yard score to put it away. Fayetteville, 30-23 over Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. They've got they're off this week, are the Purple Dogs. Then they've got a big one against Texas High in Fayetteville on the 20th. And then the one that we're going to talk a little bit in depth, of course, you can give your take on this, but also wanted to go a lot more in depth on Conway's 55-21 trouncing over Bentonville. So unless you have something to say about all of the other scores that I just mentioned, if you want to add a little insight to that, you can do so. But other than that, then we'll go into Conway and Bentonville.
Yeah, 7A West, the 2 teams that are 2-0 are Fayetteville and Springdale. I mean, are we 2005 again? No, not really. Springdale, kudos. They beat Central last week and then took care of business against Van Buren this week. Just rolling right there. Bryant, as you said, Jordan Walker really coming into his own. He parlayed the performance he had in the Salt Bowl to a good performance up in St. Louis. And yes, there's a Christian Brothers in Memphis. There's a Christian Brothers in more places than one. There's a college, but Christian Brothers in St. Louis, very good program. They've been one of the top teams in the St. Louis area for a while now. So for Bryant to go up there on the road, take care of business, it wasn't even close. I mean, 42-21 was the final, or 42-27, whatever it was. But it wasn't that. It was 42-7 at one point. So big win for them. PA taking care of business on the road. And I know we'll talk about Shiloh in a minute, but yeah, let's go to Conway, Kyle. That was a take you out behind the woodshed and just beat the dog out of them. Grayson Wilson looked really good, and they just, for Conway, this is vintage Buck James. That's all that can be said.
I think for me is obviously the line that we use all the time with all kinds of different games. It's not so much a shock that Conway won. It's just in the way that they did. Yeah. Now you think back to a couple of years ago when Conway also took Bentonville to the woodshed, and Bentonville ends up going to the state final where they lost to Bryant. Yeah. So that's my thing. I think that I'm a little bit surprised, not surprised, maybe the word. I'm more so impressed that Conway, because we knew that they were going to be good again. Anytime you're coached by Buck James, also they've got the talent, they've got the history, especially over the last half decade or so there. But just the way that this has all come together so quickly, all the new receivers. Grayson Wilson comes in from CAC, and you only have one returning starter on offense. So that's what's really been impressive to me. I mean, Grayson, he had 337 yards, completed 19 of 26 passes for 4 touchdowns. But you also look at Trey Harris, also been a great running back, over 100 yards in the first 2 games. Alex McCray, who was going to be the replacements for Jackson Anderson and Chris O'Neill. Alex McCray and Cambrian Blackman have been 2 that have answered that. So here's where I'm at with Conway. I knew, as we all did, that they were going to be one of the top 3 or 4 contenders in Class 7A. So when you go and you have that conversation that many are still having right now, is Greenwood the best team in the state? Is Parkview the best team in the state? I don't care if and this is no disrespect to Conway whatsoever. We know that, again, with their head coach, with their talent, that they are certainly a state title contender. However, I won't put them in the favorite category until we get to week 10. I've read this book too many times. That's where I'm at is right now. If anybody in Class 7, because I don't think Fayetteville is really good. I don't know that they haven't played quite the competition that Brian has right yet. So
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma is a really good school. Jay Wilkinson came over to Fayetteville from Broken Arrow. There's been some coaches go back and forth. I said it on Drive Time on Sonic Blast on Friday. So there's been some trading back and forth between those schools. Then Jay Wilkinson left and went to Jinx as the offensive coordinator in the fall. Mike Volarovich took over his spot. So, BA, as they're known, they beat Springdale Harbor 42-21, which, pretty close game. Harbor's gotten better, but, Fayetteville didn't play that great. I mean, they did okay, but, it was just one of those things. You go on the road, you're lucky to get out of there. They were down early. I came back, went ahead. It was 16-16. Next thing you know, it's 30-16, and they just held on. It's one of those things. Casey Dick said, look, it's always good to go on the road and get a win against a really good team. They did it. They got back. Now they got to regroup. So, yeah, I think right now it's Fayetteville. They're lingering right there, but Bryant, seems to be right there at the top of Class 7A, in my opinion. And then, like you said, till Conway can put it together, a full season, knock those guys off in week 10, there's not a conversation.
That's where I'm at too. And I always preach. I guess I'm being a little hypocritical here because I do preach a lot of times that you can't look at history based on this year. There are certain instances where you kind of have no choice but to. But what is it? 2015, the last time that Conway beat Bryant. It's just been, and last year was really the time that many people thought, because Bryant lost a game to Parkview for the first, which we'll get into that matchup here in just a second, but Bryant had the loss coming into that game. Conway was undefeated. They were scoring millions of points on everybody, had a really good defense. But I think that right now it is a mental thing. It still is until they prove otherwise, just because Bryant has won that game for so many consecutive years. So I think it's definitely going to be a slobber knocker of a matchup. This it always is every single year. But, like right now, I think that if any team you're going to talk about being the best in Class 7A, it's got to be Bryant to me. Just if we're talking about strength of schedule, yes, I mean, I guess you could kind of say I'm going off of history, just what they've done. Even last year, since they didn't win the state championship, made it to the semifinals with a really banged up team, a really young team. So, but that's going to be, like I said, we'll get into the since that's going to be pretty much the premier 5A. I guess you could say 5A, 7A matchup, one of the premier non-conference matchups in general. We'll get into that in Class 5A here in a second. But heading on down to Class 6A, Kevin, like you said a second ago, you mentioned Shiloh Christian, man. Well, I'll go through some scores here first, and then we'll talk about them. So Greenwood, they blanked Fort Smith Northside 58-0 after putting 70 on Bentonville West last week. So they've taken down 2 7A schools. They're going to try to do that again this week. Another shutout, Lake Hamilton 49-0 over Little Rock Southwest. And how about this one? Marion, they beat Harding Academy 37-7. Now, look, Marion might be a little bit underrated, but I don't know that we saw that happening, at least like that lopsided. Mountain Home 30-14 over Harrison. In one of the state's older rivalries, the Bombers are looking to start 3-0 for the second straight year. They take on out-of-state competition again this week. I think it's pronounced Rolla, Missouri. I know that somebody's going to probably
it's been both ways. But yeah, Rolla, it's Rolla.
That's what we're going to go with.
Yeah, we're going with Rolla.
Yeah, we'll go with that. And then Shiloh Christian 44-40 over Little Rock Christian on the road. Now, this was a back and forth game. Little Rock Christian, they would take the lead. Shiloh would respond. We've seen that so many times from the Saints. Carter Henley, you might remember Caden Henley, his older brother that was big-time linebacker for the Saints a couple years ago. He is a great player in his own right. He sealed the game with a sack, and that was just another incredible performance. And one thing that I love about Shiloh, Kevin, that I will say is that they always give credit to the offensive line. Absolutely. When they put their stats out, they always tend to do, and they compile a lot of pancakes. I believe it was 11 or 12 in this game. Griffin Mason with another big game. They had a combined effort of over 350 rushing yards, I believe, actually closer to 400. So, we know that Tucker Barnard is a fantastic coach. He was a great defensive coordinator for the Saints in his previous stint there, then had a great run at Stillwater. And this is just an example, like the Bryants, like the Shilohs, like the Pulaski Academies, like the Greenwoods. Shiloh Christian is just one of those programs where they start young, they do a great job of developing, and this is why they're, nobody was really counting them out. It was just a matter of how good would they actually be, and they're proven to be pretty dang good again.
Yeah, and hey, when your starting quarterback goes down and you go the rest of the game with your backup, and Bodenstein came in, and if that name sounds familiar, he's the younger brother wide receiver that was there a couple of years ago. So what they did, halftime, Coach Barnhart said, okay, offensive line, it's on you and Griffin Mason. So go out, do it. Most of their passes in the second line scrimmage, short stuff, bubble tunnel, midline screen, inline screen, all that good stuff. So which brought Little Rock Christian's defense up, then go over the top for the game winner. And that, that's just really good game plan, really good coaching right there. So, second year in a row that Shiloh Christian has really exposed Little Rock Christian's defense.
The run defense in particular, for sure.
Yeah, run defense. Last year it was Bo Williams. This year is more collective effort with Mason really leading the charge right there. So Little Rock Christian, they're going to bounce back, but Shiloh right now, Shiloh and Greenwood, top of 6A, it just, looking, and then Marion, that
Benton too. Yeah.
Yeah. Benton. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get it. They were off this past week. Marion, it was 12-7 late in the third quarter. Jalen Smith really took over at that point. The thing that really surprised me, and this is probably one of those instances where, Marion played their opening week in week 0. Harding Academy didn't. Okay, so it is what it is. Marion came out 37-7. They shut down Owen Miller in that offense. The only pass they had, the only touchdown they had, Miller to tailback Isaac Baker, 6-play, 65-yard drive. That was it. So kudos to Marion. I think they're one of those teams that's not talked about enough. But right now, they're pulling out everything they got, and hopefully they stay healthy. Jalen Smith had over 1,500 yards rushing last year. He was right at 200 yards this game as well. So El Dorado, They are another team in Class 6A to keep your eye on. Beating Camden Fairview is no small task. Camden Fairview, of course, made the semifinals last year. This has always been a rivalry going back to the mid-'90s when these teams are in the 4A South together. I remember we played – if our listeners out there remember Brandon Davis that played basketball for the Razorbacks, he was also an all-state receiver for the Camden Fairview Cardinals back in 95, 96, 97. Fall of 96, Camden Fairview was one of the top teams in the state in Class 4A. Doug Hurd was a quarterback. They beat us at El Dorado like 8-6. Driving rainstorms, just one of those things. And under Nick Vaughn and Junie Atkins, they're just really good. So for El Dorado and little Jacobs, Elliot Jacobs' son, got to give a shout out to my man Elliot Jacobs, class of 2000 down in El Dorado. His son, 10 of 17, really kept those guys in it and made the comeback right there as they won 35-34.
Chris Hill, we've talked about this on previous podcasts, and you and I have talked about it many times. He's been in a lot of different schools, but he just finds ways to win. I know that's the end of the Sylvan Hills tenure didn't go so well, but you think about that 2020 season when he was there, and they started 1-5, and then they ended up making a run to the semifinals, almost made it to the state championship. They were one play away. Yeah, Lake Hamilton scored. I believe Lake Hamilton stopped them on a 2-point conversion, but it's Mitchell Polk is a great quarterback that's now at Smackover. He's very talented, dual threat. And they lost him. He actually started some as a freshman for El Dorado. Yeah. He was their quarterback last year and then leaves. I don't know what happened, but he left in August and is now at Smackover. And so and I've heard actually a good bit about Elliot. So what's his son's name? I've heard about him.
Cannon, I believe.
That sounds right. That sounds right. So that's a great, I know that's, is really good to at least start young again from a standpoint of you're going to have one for a while. I know that it's always a catch-22 because it's like, well, you're starting somebody that's green, but that is a big win. Like you said, they actually it was a back and forth game, kind of like the Shiloh Christian, Little Rock Christian that we were talking about, but Nick Vaughn has history. He was at El Dorado previously, so very well known there. I'm glad you brought that up because I actually didn't have that in my notes. What a big-time win for the Wildcats. I know that they're always, like I said, any team coached by Chris Hill, you certainly can't count them out. But, will they be in that 4-6 play? That El Dorado, you probably feel good about them making the playoffs.
Yeah.
Are they going to be in that 4-6 range?
They got to go as a 3. It's just not right. But I'll tell you this right now, with the way it's lining up with everything – in the West, Greenwood, Shiloh, Mountain Home, I really feel comfortable, that's really kind of the top 3 right there.
Sure.
From what we've seen right now. And then the East, Marion, Benton, of course, right there. And then El Dorado right now, to me, is that third best team in that conference.
Yeah, I think we're still trying to figure out because Jonesboro's played a really tough schedule. So I think that we're still trying to figure out about them. That's the jury's still kind of out. And I had a strong feeling that we probably wouldn't know where maybe the non-conference slate is not a good time to judge them. So I think that we're still trying to fit, but I think you're right. I think it's either going to be El Dorado or Jonesboro, probably right there behind Benton or Marion, certainly at least fighting for that 4 spot at the very least, what El Dorado. So then on down to Class 5A, let's see here if I can. Okay, there's the scores. So Jacksonville, was it 8-7 or 7-6? It was 8-7. So there's your baseball score. I saw 8-7 and I saw 7-6.
We had 2. We had an 8-7, and then the Green Forest game was 12-0. So
12. Okay.
Those are my 2 baseball scores.
I think that was actually the Green Forest game. That was like one of 2 or 3 scores that I couldn't find from the week. So yeah, we had a couple of baseball scores there. BB 31-7, or I'm sorry, it was 21-17 over Nettleton. That was Justin Bigham's first win. I really like Justin Bigham, Kevin. I mean, that guy. I think he's going to do a great job at BB. Win 56. He
called into the show and was very complimentary of Nettleton, of course, with Maddox Hampton at quarterback. Said, look, that was a very big win for his program.
Yeah, big time, and especially to play that good a defense. I know, like you said, I mean, big time there to get that one. And then win with a big 56-14 win over Forest City. This one was a little bit shocking, Kevin. Valley View 49-28 over Searcy. Now, Valley View was up huge. It was like 35-0 or something at one point, 28-0. So I was a little bit shocked at the margin in that one. Watson Chapel, Stephen Hurd gets his first win as the Wildcats head coach at 19-7 victory over Crossett. As we mentioned, Camden Fairview, they fell short in a resilient effort to El Dorado. I believe actually El Dorado blocked the extra point to win that game. That's why it was a 1 point. Clint Ashcraft also talking about getting first wins. He gets his first win as Bologna's head coach, 31-12 over Sylvan Hills. Robinson squeaks past Jonesboro, 25-17. And then, of course, Parkview runs away from Maumelle in the second half, 51-9. Kevin, this was a 9-0 game in Parkview's favor at half. And from what I was told by Coach Bolding, he got after him pretty good. I felt like they were just kind of going through the motions and just kind of, not playing even close to their best football. Not to take anything away from Maumelle, but just didn't feel like they were playing their best football. So he really got after them at halftime, and boy, did they respond. Quentin Murphy, 3 total touchdowns. And then junior Dax Crosby, 3 carries, 55 yards, and then 2 touchdowns. He had a couple of others.
Pull another name out of the hat.
Exactly.
It's just like, I'm like, who's that? No, I know Dax. I know who Dax is, and know that every running back, they got 19 of them back there. But it's just, okay, you got a guy that gets a pick six, takes it back 48 yards, and it's just, outside of just the random fan, you never heard of these guys, and it's just, they're just that good.
Well, and I said all during a little bit of I mentioned it at media days to Coach Bolden, they got Jace White, who is a Division I prospect that came in. Game. Yeah, and he had a great game. He's playing some safety for him. He's obviously playing some receiver. Then you got Micah Johnson, who has had a good start to the season, the defensive lineman from North Little Rock. I mean, they've got some dudes there past Montario Elston, past Amarian Robinson. I mean, they've got some studs on that team. And what's crazy about this week, so of course we'll be on now. You guys are in Fordyce. You and Randy will be in Fordyce. So they will be in Fordyce for the Football Friday. RJ, myself, and Josh will be at War Memorial Stadium for the Parkview Bryant game. And what's unique about this one, last year when these two teams played, most were pretty much thinking, now I know that Greenwood might not have gotten the nod as much last year as being the #1 overall team in the state, but with Parkview and Bryant, it was pretty much at that discussion last year was, okay, who the winner of this game is probably going to be #1 in all the polls, and that's essentially what happened. Well, Parkview comes in, they win 28-27. They end a 54 in-game win streak, in-state win streak by Bryant. And now Bryant is trying to snap a 27-game overall win streak by Parkview, which is the longest in the state currently, the longest active streak. So even though there's not really much more than that on the line, it's just a big game where both of these teams are going to get a really great look before they hit conference play. There's still quite a bit on the line, especially since Parkview is on that 27-game win streak this year.
Yeah, you want your teams to play the best teams available to put yourself in a position to win a conference title. I learned that at an early age from Scooter Register. When he got to El Dorado in 95, they were just kind of an also-ran. Really haven't been on the state, contending stage since the early 90s, So when he got there, he really revamped the schedule. Look, we're going to go play Conway in our opener. Yeah, we're going to still have the Magnolia series, but he's going to play. And then he started playing Fort Smith Southside. And at that time, there was Daniel Lunny was leading them to a state title under Barry Lunny Sr. So you always want to, revitalize your schedule and play. Even when he got to Catholic and North Pulaski were a big rivalry, and they used to go back and forth on, who would win, even though North P wasn't that good. At that time, my dad was the head coach at North Pulaski. Scooter's like, hey, sorry, we're not going to play you guys anymore. We got to get ready for a conference title run. Next thing you know, they're 11-2 and making it to the state semifinals. That was the last team up until John Fogelman's team a couple years ago that had done well at Catholic. So, Coach Bolding in the same instance with Parkview is like, all right, his first year they played Benton at the stadium, and now they're taking on Bryant. They're taking on Melissa, Texas. They're taking on anybody they can to put his kids in a situation to succeed. So kudos to those guys. Maumelle really doing the same thing. This game, the Maumelle Parkview game, Parkview played Harbor last year. So, it's totally different. Now the thing with Maumelle, they thought they were there. They thought they were on the level of a Parkview. They got all the transfers in. They even got one from Parkview, evidently. I don't know. You'll hear more about that later. But they got all these transfers in. They were going to be, hey, we're going to push for a state title. We're going to be right there. not so fast. It was, and Parkview made a statement. With a minute left, Murphy throws a 25-yard touchdown pass to make it 51-6 with the clock running. Brad Bolding, Bobby Bolding, the whole coaching staff, they wanted to make a statement that Parkview is still big brother on the block in Class 5A, and nobody's close. It's not even close. So, Maumelle still got work to do. Let's go to Hot Springs Lakeside. I know they're next. They are a serious contender, Kyle. They shut down Sheridan 56-27. Grady Oman had another great night. Kyle, this game was 27-20 at one point. Next thing you know, 29 points later, scored by Lakeside. It's 56-20 in the second half, and you got a running clock. When is the last time a Kevin Kelly coach team had a running clock put on them? I don't know. Yeah, you have to go way back. I know Christian beat PA last year 55-13 or whatever it was, but of course Coach Kelly wasn't on that team. So it's been a long time. I mean, it's just doesn't happen every day. So Coach Kelly knew coming into this week, look, Lakeside's a lot better than what Whitehall is. We're going to have to be on our game. Lakeside recovered every onside kick. They were 4 for 4. They forced Sheridan to punt. Sheridan went for it on fourth down a couple of times inside their own 20, 30-yard line, didn't get it. Coach Kelly played the odds right. He punted away. That's what you have to do. It's not just be hard-headed and never punt. So, get off Coach Kelly for never punting. He's actually already punted this year. So, I like Lakeside, man. They are the epitome and the extension of Garen Rockwell. I mean, I don't think you could say anything other than that. Grady Owen is one of the best players in Class 5A, maybe the state. A high school football player, everything you want in a young man. So
absolutely.
They are going to be trouble for that, 5A South. And as you look forward, Lakeside, Camden Fairview, Parkview. You and I talked about it, Kyle. 5A South may be the best conference in all state in Arkansas high school football.
I don't think there's any doubt about it right now until somebody else proves different. But you mentioned Grady Oman, 53 yards to the house on the opening score, 135-yard game, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, Kevin, I mean, we knew he was good last year, but he's really busted onto the scene this year, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, he's one of the best players in the state right now, and they've got road trips to – now, I don't know if both of these are on the road. I might have it written down wrong, but Robinson and Camden – so they start conference play with Camden Fairview. That's one of the things we talk about this a lot and we mention it during every season, but especially during the spring sports with baseball and softball, we talk about how much we love those coaches who challenge their teams. Because if you're going to sit here and you're going to boast all this, and I'm not saying they boast their talent, but I'm just saying if you're going to talk about the team, what you have on your team, and then you're not going to go out there and show it, I don't have much respect for that. But
that's right.
With what Coach Rockwell has done, I can't say. I mean, I know we're not supposed to pick favorites, but he's one of my favorite coaches. I respect so much what he and his staff have done, because we know, and we're not here to poo-poo on any previous coach or anything, but let's call it what it is. There was not great culture before he took over. That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's what it is. And again, that is not to be harsh on anybody. We're just calling it as we see it. And with just the change that they had just from last year, okay, man, this is a very much improved team. Then we're like, okay, this is not just an improved team. Like, they're good. Like, they're really good. And then this year, I mean, they're on the verge of being great if you can't put them in that category now. Now, I do think that the next 2 weeks, with the grind, it will tell a lot. And so there's no doubt. But I'll tell you what, that week, not to look too far ahead, but you and I can do that. Yep. Week 9, that's looking pretty appetizing right now.
It'll be on the road too for them. They have at the stadium, and then they close out with Hot Springs. So a lot to get done between now and then. Hot Springs Lakeside can show us a little bit more about who they are.
Then on down to Class 4A, got some scores here. First, Hamburg 27-22 over McGee. Now this is fairly significant because, look, I know that Blake Johnson, after he left Whitehall, he was defensive coordinator for Bobby Bolding there. He's had some good players there, but he plays in a tough conference. They're still trying to get that program back up. So to beat a quality program like McGee that just moved down to 3A, that's big time for that program. Also, Southside Batesville, a state title contender with a big win, 49-13 over Harrisburg. Pottsville in a 38-35 thriller over Charleston. I'll tell you what, this Pottsville team I like, Kevin. I I don't know if I'd label maybe as a sleeper, but it's a team that I'm going to be watching. I really like what Pottsville has. Monticello, this was a little bit shocking, 41-20 over Bauxite. Malvern 34-28 over arch rival Glen Rose. That's a fun game, even though I know sometimes most of the time it typically does end in Malvern's favor by long shot. This one was a little bit closer. How about Star City? Coach Chris Norton getting his first win. They win the Battle of the Bayou Trophy 34-29 over Dumas. Arkadelphia, big time over Hot Springs 52-14. Now, this is that complete game that you were looking for from this year's team. They turned it on about a game or two quicker than they did last season, Kevin. And then also, too, I want to talk a second about another team along with Pottsville that I'm kind of keeping an eye on the outside looking in. Clinton 31-14 over Heber Springs. Ryland Jones over 300 all-purpose yards. Also he had around 260, I think it was, rushing, plus a kickoff return for a touchdown. Also Zach Hunt Gonzalez over 100 yards. Just a massive night for the Yellow Jackets on the ground. Chris Dufresne, they love to run that football. But also, too, Warren, we're kind of wondering what were they going to look like without Jackson Denton, just because they've gotten so used to him in that offense. And obviously, not to say that he's not missed, but they found a gem in Cam Burke. So I did confirm. I know that we were trying to figure out, we figured that he was Traylon Burks' little brother, being from Warren, but he is actually from Fordyce. I did confirm that this morning. He's Jaquez Cross's little brother. That's now the starting running back or one of the starting running backs, depending on the play, for Arkansas State, that had a great run at Fordyce. But, man, they've had Cam Burks there with that terrible injury that Jackson had last week in the season opener against Greenbrier. But Cam had 3 touchdown passes in his first game. He had 3 touchdown passes on Friday night, again, in a win over Whitehall, 46-14. So it does help that he's got a lot of dudes to throw to, as Coach Bo Hembry has referred to his receivers as. But I'll tell you, man, a dual threat like that in this offense, that's dangerous.
Yeah, and probably the game of the week outside of Parkview and Bryant is Elkins and Warren. They're going to be playing in Russellville this week at Arkansas Tech. So we're going to get it was 33-0. Davis had 4 touchdowns on the ground for him, 93 yards on 18 carries. So they're doing a little bit of everything. Now, the key with Warren this week is, could it be a shootout? Possibly. Elkins beat Dardanelle 51-0. We were real big on Dardanelle dropping down from Class 5A, being a top 10 team. Creed Vega had 6 touchdowns in week 0. Could this be Coach Vega really getting, really pushing the top echelon of Class 4? Elkins put that to bed quickly, 51-0. So you got Elkins, you got Warren. Can Elkins D-backs keep up with Warren's wide receivers? That's going to be the question. All right. You're not going to be able to go cover 0 and just man up, because you're not going to be able to do it. That Thomas, Jordan, those guys out there, you can't cover them one-on-one. So you're going to have to take guys out of the box. And when you take guys out of the box, that allows Cam Burks to just run free. He can run wild back there. So got to give the edge to Warren in this one. Going back, looking at other things in Class 4A, we talked about Elkins. Clinton, you talked about Clinton, Ryland Jones. Man, Zane Widerly's, after everything he does last year, he had over 400 yards, I think, in the CAC game last year where Clinton beat him. Now you got a guy like Ryland back there, 300 yards all-purpose, 90-yard kickoff return. So watch out for the Clinton Yellow Jackets. They are a team on the rise for sure in Class 4A.
Big offensive line, very impressive.
Yeah, and that's one thing in talking about Clinton and Pottsville. Both coaches, we talked to him on Friday night, Coach Rust for Pottsville, and then, of course, Coach Dufresne, just talking about their offensive lines. They gave all credit to those guys getting down in the trenches, doing big things. Arkadelphia, good job, Coach Trey Shucker. You did good, kid. Coming out 52-14 over Hot Springs. This has been a game in the past few years that's been really close. 2 years ago, Arkadelphia had to score a 2-point conversion on the last play of the game to win that game at Hot Springs. So them getting a 38-point win, it's really big. So looking forward to seeing how they bounce back. So Class 4A, Star City, we did talk to Coach Chris Norton the other night. Really good win for that program over Dumas. That's a really big rivalry game. So impressed by what we saw this weekend in Class 4A.
And on down to Class 3A, I've got actually probably the most scores of any on here, notable ones. So Hoxie, they survived Jonesboro Westside 14-13, Ryzen 38-16 over Harmony Grove OC. It's an impressive win for the Wildcats, Kevin, especially after OC, what they did to Junction City the week before. And then this one, a little bit shocking again, not the result, but just the margin. Mayflower 35-0 over 2A defending champion Bigelow. So yeah, Mayflower there, definitely a sleeper in Class 3A. I mean, not just because of this. We talked about them a little bit, but a team to watch there. Smackover 64-36 over Fountain Lake. Now that's notable. I mentioned Mitchell Polk a second ago, who transferred to Smackover from El Dorado. He was 16 of 23 for 260 and 5 touchdowns, had 80 yards on the ground. Additionally, Rivercrest 29-14 over Gosnell. How about this? Tyler Pascal, first win at Palestine Wheatley over his father, Van. And I know that pretty much everybody, including myself, had picked Van to pick Dad to beat son. But Tyler Pascal and Palestine Wheatley, they take down Cross County 34-22. And then Mansfield 41-8 over Waldron. Fordyce, they get revenge over Magnet Cove 62-8, revenge in a big way. How about this one? Bismarck just absolutely smacks Mineral Springs 62-14. Walnut Ridge survives Truman 29-28. Prescott rallies from being down 22-10 against Salem. Now that was a Thursday night game.
Yeah.
And the Curly Wolves win that one 31-22. Boonville 31-14 over Ozark. Congratulations to Coach. Now it's Doc Crowley. Okay, Crowley. See, I always forget every time. And I know I should know by now, but I always forget. But he gets his 50th win at Boonville. Now, according to our man Glenn Parrish, that's faster than any coach in program history. And when that's at Boonville, that's saying something. That's very impressive. So really, really like Doc a lot, man. Another one of those just good old boys. Great dude. So congrats to him. Connor Lentz in that game, 11 carries, 120. There was a big question, who's going to take over for Dax Golf? Now, nobody replaces a guy like Dax. You don't just
do it in the aggregate. You moneyball that thing.
That's right. And Connor Lentz did a great job for the Bearcats last year. I know, and starting off the year really well, 11 carries, 128 yards. He also caught Jace Washburn's lone completion of the game, which there was only 3 pass attempts, so it's not as bad as it sounds, for a 37-yard touchdown. Damari Poole added 2 touchdowns on the ground. They also had a pretty balanced effort. Multiple guys got carries for the Bearcats. No shock there. Colby Wilbanks for Ozark. He countered with 10 carries for 108 yards and a score. And then also the Newport Greyhounds take down.
Rolling.
Man, they rolled over their rival in Class 5A, Batesville. I know Batesville's definitely had some struggles in recent memory, but Newport over Batesville 66-24. Keandria Barker with a huge game, 212 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, also caught a touchdown. So right now, Kevin, with respect to the 3A3 and Rivercrest especially, we still like that conference. We know it's really deep, but to me, it's a 3-horse race. It's Boonville, the defending state champion, Prescott, the defending runner-up. I know for a little bit there, it was hands down Prescott for a lot of people, but really with those additions that Newport got with Keandre Barker, with Moni Wren, especially between Newport, Boonville, Prescott, it's really, with also some respect to Salem, because they played a really good game against Prescott, and they've got Newport this week. So Coach Josh Watson, credit to him. They are challenging their players, but I think right now, if you're asking me today, as we're recording on Monday, September 9th, it's a 3-horse race between Boonville, Prescott, and Newport in Class 3A.
Yeah, how are you going to stop Newport? I mean, you just pick your poison at the end of the day. You put up 66 on a 5A Batesville squad, and I know Batesville, they're in the bottom half of Class 5A right now, but good tradition-rich program. Kyle, this was a rivalry that was put on hold for a little while. The programs were just so far apart that, it just wouldn't have been a competitive game. With Coach King there and Newport just kind of going up and down. Newport's lost a ton of enrollment over the years. They used to be in the next highest classification in the state of Arkansas back in the late 90s. They were in the 4A East when there was 5 classifications. They were in the 3A East when there were 4 classifications. So, seeing Newport, what they're doing right now, I agree with you. They're right there. They're that third team. Now, what's going to put them in conversation for being the best team in 3A? Beat the teams that are already there, and you're going to get that chance in the postseason. So Salem, it might have just been one of those instances where they got up 22-7, and you just don't know how to finish a team like Prescott. Prescott comes back, scores the last 24 points of the game to win 31-22. We're sitting there watching it on Thursday night going, man, what's going on here? We know Salem's good. To beat Pocahontas 30-28 in week 0. They've been playing really good in preseason scrimmages. Every time we've seen them, 7-on-7 team camps. But they just gave up at the end. They just gave it up at the end. So really tough loss for them. They're going to have to bounce back against Newport. Booneville, Ozark. I figured this was Ozark's year to get them back. But it's such a physical game. Ozark went through 4 quarterbacks in this game. Booneville used 2. And we got word. We have to get it confirmed, but Kobe Wilbanks may be out for a little while with a knee injury. We'll have to get that confirmed. So having to look forward right there. Ozark, luckily, not the toughest schedule moving forward, but they've got some depth right there in Class 4A. Good win for Rising. They beat the HGOC 38-16. That's something that really stood out to me. Coach Chris Vereen, his first win as head coach right there. They just came out, put it to them. So, and
it's crazy because I think they only attempted like 1 or 2 passes, and they did basically, through one pass and basically did exactly what Harmony Grove took into Junction City. And I mean, from what I gather, just running back that single back, or actually it wasn't the single wing. I think it was the flex bone, if I'm not mistaken, that they've ran.
They've done a lot of veer in the past is what Vereen has. He's done a lot of split back veer, just really tough to get on because those guards and everything, they really get in the trenches and they can really get after you. So Walnut Ridge over Truman, 29-28. That was a game that really kind of stood out because we had talked a lot about Walnut Ridge. Enrique Perez, their big backfield, had potential to go over 2,500 yards, 3,000 yards this year. So Walnut Ridge, Newport, Rivercrest, all in the same conference. But as you said, until somebody knocks them off, it's still Booneville.
And last but not least in Class 2A, a few scores here before we get to the main dish. Mark Tree rebounds from a 43-6 win, rebounds from last week's loss with a 43-6 win over Manila. Conway Christian 36-13 over Quitman. Desark on a very emotional night where they paid tribute to the life of Cash Flanagan, a 2024 graduate who passed away last week. They took down Hazen in big way, 46-8. And then right down the road, Carlisle, 41-20 over Junction City. Kevin, as you mentioned at the top of the show, 39 penalties is what we counted. Now, I got to give a shout-out to my man, Dusty Clark, who was up there filming for Hootens with us. He was the one who gave me that number at 36, and I think he had been keeping a tally. And we counted up from there, and so we basically averaged 10 penalties a quarter. And not only were there – and like you said, we're not on – look, you are an official yourself. You come from an officiating family. We're not on here to poo-poo refs. That's not what the goal is here. Like you said, there were plenty of time. You go back and look at the film, it's like, okay, that's a reasonable call. I think for me, there was not much of a sense of urgency. Like there would be a flag thrown, and that's just, okay, what are we doing here, guys? This is a routine deal. So the penalties were certainly the story of the game. It was 7-6, Junction City at halftime. And really it was, Dominique Grimes, who is probably the fastest player in Class 2A. I feel pretty comfortable.
He had 287 and 3 on the night.
Without him, they're getting blanked. Without him, this game is 41-0, maybe worse, because I think he plays a little bit of, I didn't even notice. I'm sure he plays a little defense too.
He did. He played some cornerback. Yeah.
Right. So and that makes sense because they're gonna put him on their best player. But really without him and that split back veer or wildcat, whatever you want to call it, some people call it the wild dragon, they just were not able to do anything. Taylor Owens, I know he's struggled, their quarterback. He's struggling to find his receivers right now. But, look, I talked to Coach, Devin Ball and I are good friends, and I've talked to him about it. He's not panicking whatsoever. That Devin knows, as I've talked about, he knows what it takes for success. There's coaches on that staff that know that as well. But why I'm not hitting it's 2 weeks in, and yes, it is a big deal if you can't, especially even in 2A now. You obviously have to be able to run the football to do anything, but and that's something that I talked with Coach Wilson from Carlisle about. That 2A even is a passing class for the most part.
Yeah,
It used to
it's
just
to be where you
yeah.
spread them out and let your athletes work. I mean,
That's right, and it used to just be Harding Academy that did that. People did the wing tee or the flex bone offense, whatever the case may be, something run heavy. But really, both of these teams, I mean, you see both of them come out with 3 wide, and they'll have an H back or something. I saw a lot of pistol from Junction City, but really, Carlisle's to me right now, I mean, they flexed their muscle, and that's kind of the next point is to me they've separated themselves early from Class 2A. With respect to Conway Christian, I still like them. I still like Mark Tree, but I think with Carlisle, especially once freshman and Kevin Ty Tanksley, he's still got some freshman kinks to work out. He's a freshman. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
But this kid is going to be big time. You know him, I'm sure, more so on the baseball front. He's also a very high-profile baseball player for 2028. He was 7 of 16 for 204. Really settled down in the second half. Yeah. And then had a passing touchdown, also rushed for 1. Jaden Elliott is an absolute stud. 2 touchdowns on the ground. Gabe Boyle, number 44. Love what I saw from him. To me, he was the X. Yeah. Lawson Petrus was another one. I really liked what we saw from Boyle in this game because to me, he was the X factor just with some of the blocks that he threw, some of those passes that he caught out of the backfield and made things happen. But the true X factor, really, though, Jimmy Cham. I love kickers, Kat. I mean, we're getting more and more kickers in this state, it seems like, by the year. Sophomore, automatic. Hey, as a Dallas Cowboys fan, that's one thing that I am very excited about this year. Minus injury, we're going to have the best kicker in the league. I love watching good field goal kicking, and that's what Jimmy Cham has. He didn't hit anything super long this past Friday, but he was 2 for 2, 5 for 5 on field goals. He's had, I think, 10 touchbacks in 2 games. So Carlisle's a complete team. I don't think that we had any question about that. We probably thought that 2 games in, Junction City would be in this spot like they're in right now. But right now, I mean, Carlisle, just like I have in this title right here, I think they've separated themselves from 2A early.
Yeah, and you could see, and watching, we stayed for the whole first half, and it was, back and forth, penalties, just really couldn't get in the flow. And with a young quarterback like Tanksley, you really want to get in the flow. Carlisle had trouble getting they wasted 3 timeouts on offense. And you could see Coach Wilson's frustration. You got to get the call in. You got to get the play in. And they're not using hand signals. Tanksley's running halfway, and OC's giving him the play. So it just kind of didn't get him in the flow of things. There was a play. It was 3rd and long. It was after a penalty, and there was a wheel route down the right sideline, on the home sideline. And I mean, Tanksley just dropped the ball in beautifully. They didn't score on that drive because our man kicked a field goal right there. I think is what made it 7-6 right there. So. Yeah, what Carlisle does and what they did to adjust to Junction City is you got to give Coach Wilson kudos on this. So early in the game, Junction City spread everything out, and then they would run Grimes. First touchdown of the game was 35, 36 yards, really quick. It's first or second possession, they got on the board. I'm like, all right, Junction City is going to roll right here. Wilson packed the box. He backed his corners off 10 to 15 yards, put a safety high, and kept 8 down by the line of scrimmage. Now, Junction City did not make any adjustments right there. What they did was kept packing it in tighter. They would get in that single wing where they just snapped it to Grimes, and all they did was run power off the right side the entire night. So what I wanted to see out of Junction City was if you can spread the field and use your athletes, go do it. They just couldn't. Quarterback couldn't get in a rhythm or anything, so they just relied on Grimes too much. I think as they get further down the line, they're able to use that passing game to open up more running lanes and not just tell Grimes, okay, it's you against the defense. They're going to be all right. That's why I think they're going to be okay. So, for Carlisle, they just kept coming. They took advantage of mistakes, and that's the sign of a really good team. So, talking to Coach Wilson, and he got us a shirt. All we got, that's all they got. And it's a bison with a bar on its shoulders. When you got somebody like Lawson Petrus, who, maybe 145 pounds soaking wet, but can, power clean 240 and squat over 400 pounds, you got a really good football team. So right now, it's Carlisle. Junction City Conway Christian had a good night. Jaron Thomas really showed out at quarterback. Ken Carter from Mark Tree had another great night. Mark Tree put up a lot of points, but right now, Carlisle has really separated themselves.
And Carlisle versus everybody. I don't know if you saw the shirt that Coach Wilson wore in pregame. I like that too. Carlisle's Look, man, I got a lot of history in that town. My aunt and uncle
we got
moved
family there too. Yeah.
Yeah. In like 1971 moved there. My uncle is still there. Actually was working. I got to see him. He was actually working the concession stand for the Kiwanis Club. And yeah, very, very, they're proud of their sports, man. And I love it. You know, when Coach Wilson, you know, it's his second year there and
he
loves
played
to
for
challenge
James
stuff.
Clayton there.
That's right.
And I was talking to BJ Green, who's the superintendent there now. He was the principal and he came as the athletic director, but he was a defensive coordinator under when Scott Waymeyer was there.
Oh.
So yeah, he was there, went to Heber Springs, and he coached baseball and football, but was a head baseball coach at Heber, and then went to Smackover, and then came back in administration at Carlisle. So you got some guys that love Carlisle. They love the tradition. They love the history. Now they just got to get over that hump. They've been to the state title game recently. They just can't get over that hump. They did 2 years ago with Sullivan at running back. They just got to get over that hump and win the big one.
Yeah, I didn't think that they had ever won us because I know, as you said, they had 6 finalist teams and they actually honored them on Friday night. I didn't realize that they won because I was looking at their Facebook post from like July and it said they were honoring the 1960 team. So I text my guy or our guy, Mark Buffalo, and because he's a 90 alum. I was like, hey, is that what's the deal with that? And it was apparently the AP. It wasn't I guess the AAA, you know, this was back before the playoffs.
Before playoffs, so,
yeah. Right. So they won it in 1960. But yeah, they've had I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for old Frank McClellan, there's no telling how many state championships I think Gillette was kind of a thorn, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Rising was another one. So
Shallow.
Yeah. It's always, man, if you think about it, I mean, there's so many teams in all levels of sports that were so great, but they were never able to get that championship because there was a dynasty going on at that particular time. But Kevin, we finally made it a show where I didn't forget to unmute my mic.
So set a record. You're growing up so big, Kyle.
I'm growing up. I've had this same soundboard for I don't even know how long, but dude, I do that when I produce radio shows too. John Neighbors used to get mad at me all the time. Not mad, but he used to give me crap all the time because I'd forget to mute. So it's better to forget to unmute than to mute when certain cases. So well, that will do it for episode number 20. What is this? 29 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. Be sure to check out naturalstatesports.com. We'll have our written previews of definitely the games that we do that week. Of course, we'll have a preview out I might do a notebook this week. I'm not sure yet, but we'll definitely have the 8-man report out as well as a preview on Parkview and Bryant. So, Kevin, who does Fordyce play this week?
I know you were going to ask me that. Yeah.
Either way, just look for Kevin and Randy at Fordyce. You're going to be at historic Paul Bryant Field. That is one of my favorite places. We might try to make it down. I don't know if the schedule is going to match, but I love covering games there. But so you guys will be there. And then, of course, like I mentioned at the top of the show, myself and RJ and Josh Neighbors will be on the call at War Memorial Stadium.
No, they got Mineral Springs on Friday.
That's right, because they played Magnet Cove last week and they got Mineral Springs this time. So, sounds good. Well, and of course, also check out the Natural State Sports Network on YouTube as well, where you can listen or watch this episode as well as catch all of our other networks: Maumelle, Sylvan Hills, Parkview, Robinson, and Mills. I did all those without slipping. I usually at least miss one in there. So that will do it again for episode number 29 for Kevin Bohannon. My name's Kyle Sutherland, and all of us here at Natural State Sports. We will see you next week.